Okay, so have you ever noticed this thing where you can understand English, like you can watch movies and stuff,
Hmm.
you can listen to podcasts, even maybe follow along in meetings,
Yep.
but when it comes to actually speaking it,
Oh, yeah.
it's like a whole different ballgame.
Totally.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today. Why isn't that gap between listening and actually speaking?
Right.
And we're going to be looking at this awesome podcast called SmartPodcast and Chill.
Oh, yeah. I love those guys.
They just have this really fun, relatable vibe.
Yeah.
And they're all about solving everyday problems, giving people actionable advice.
It's great for like just practical tips.
Exactly. And one of the things they talk about is how this whole listening speaking gap,
Yep.
it's not really about intelligence. It's
Right.
about the difference between passive and active language skill.
It's really fascinating how they break that down.
Yeah, so it's like, I can watch British baking shows all day long.
Uh-huh.
Does that mean I can make a Victoria sponge cake?
Probably not.
No, not at all. I mean, there's knowing something and then there's actually doing it.
It's like the difference between reading about playing the guitar and actually playing the guitar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they talked about how this jump from understanding to speaking,
Yeah.
it involves overcoming a few key hurdles.
Totally. Like obstacles
Yeah.
in the way.
And what, of course, like everyone says, is practice.
Right. Practice. Practice.
But it's interesting because they've pointed out that listening is passive.
Yeah. You're just taking it in.
You're just absorbing.
Right.
But speaking is active. You have to like retrieve the vocabulary.
You have to put it all together.
You have to build the sentences, pronounce the words,
All in real time.
and do it on the spot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So it's not even just having the words in your head.
Right.
It's like my brain can know the English word for cat,
Yeah.
but in the moment when I'm telling a story and I want to say cat,
It's not there.
it takes like a second too long
That's that gap.
for it to come out.
Yeah, they talk about that.
And it's so frustrating.
It's that delay.
It really is.
It's like a classic symptom.
Yeah.
And they tie it into this other hurdle,
Okay.
which is mental translation.
Oh, yeah.
So many people get stuck translating
From their native language to English.
from their native language to English in their head.
In their head.
And it just slows everything down.
And it sounds so unnatural.
Yeah, you can't be spontaneous. You can't just like let the words flow.
It's like trying to drive a car and look up the directions at the same time.
Right, you're never going to get anywhere.
Instead of knowing the route.
Exactly.
You can't enjoy the scenery.
You can't enjoy the ride.
No, you're just stressed.
And so to really be fluent, they say your brain needs to be trained to think in English.
Directly in English.
Yeah, like it's your native language.
Wow.
And that's where the practice comes in.
Okay, so we're back to practice.
We're back to practice, but they have a lot of really good advice.
Okay, I'm ready.
And one of the biggest things that I thought was so powerful was acknowledging the fear.
Oh, the fear.
The fear of making mistakes.
Yeah, that can be so paralyzing.
I used to be terrified to speak up in English class
Really?
because I thought everyone would judge me for my accent or my grammar.
Oh, totally. I was the same way. I mean, it took me years to get over that.
And these guys on the podcast, they're like admitting that fear is the first step
Okay.
to conquering it.
So we got to face the fear.
Face the fear and then start small.
Okay.
Build your confidence gradually.
Little by little.
Yeah, and they said something that I thought was so important.
What's that?
They said, see mistakes not as failures,
Okay.
but as learning opportunities.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
It's like a reframing.
Yeah, it's a total reframing.
It's not a mistake. It's a learning opportunity.
Exactly. So instead of trying to have this super complex debate in English
Right off the bat.
right away,
Yeah.
maybe just focus on ordering coffee.
Or like having a short conversation with the colleague.
Exactly. Small, achievable goals
Okay.
that push you a little bit out of your comfort zone.
That makes sense.
Little by little.
So we're easing in.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they also had some really cool ideas for just like daily practice
Okay, I'm all about that.
to build fluency.
Yeah.
And one that really stood out to me was narrate your daily activities,
What do you mean?
like in English.
Oh, okay.
Like you're doing a voiceover for a documentary.
Okay, so instead of just making breakfast, I'm like, this morning, our subject is attempting to create the perfect omelet.
Exactly. You might feel a little silly at first,
Oh, for sure.
but it forces you to use the vocabulary,
Okay.
like in context,
And to think in English.
and just get comfortable speaking it out loud.
So I'm like the star of my own documentary.
Exactly.
Okay, I love it.
They also talked about practicing like classic self-talk in the mirror
Oh, that's a good one.
using language learning apps.
Uh-huh. For the pronunciation?
Yeah, for feedback and
Oh, right.
reading out loud
Oh, I love reading out loud.
from engaging material.
Yeah, like stuff you're actually interested in.
Exactly. So it doesn't feel like a chore.
It's got to be fun.
It's got to be enjoyable.
I actually heard that reading out loud is really good
Mm-hmm.
because it helps you internalize the rhythm
Yes.
and the intonation of the language.
The musicality of it.
Not just the words themselves.
Exactly. And speaking of rhythm and intonation,
Okay.
one of the most interesting things I thought they talked about was mimicking the masters.
Mimicking the masters. What does
Yeah.
that mean?
So they recommend choosing proficient English speakers.
Okay.
You admire
I
actors, news anchors,
podcast hosts
podcast hosts.
like
Yes.
us. Are you saying I should try to sound like you?
Well, I mean, imitation is a really powerful tool
Just kidding.
for language acquisition.
Okay.
And so they're saying by observing and mimicking
Okay.
the pronunciation, the intonation, even like the pauses of these really good speakers,
Okay.
you start to internalize these nuances
That make them sound so natural.
that make them sound so natural.
So it's not just about copying an accent.
Right.
It's about understanding how the language flows.
The musicality.
Yeah, like how the words go together.
Yeah, and like the chunks they use.
Oh, the chunks. Okay, so it's like going beyond textbook English.
Totally.
And absorbing those little things that you would never learn in a classroom.
Like idioms and slang
Oh, yeah, the slang.
that make you sound like a native speaker.
Okay, this is starting to sound less scary and more fun.
Right.
It's like I get to play with the language.
Exactly. And that's a really important point.
Experiment.
The hosts really emphasize enjoying the process.
Okay, I like that.
So find activities you actually enjoy,
Okay.
like watching movies, listening to music.
Chatting with friends.
Yeah, chatting with friends online.
Okay.
Whatever it is.
So instead of seeing it as this chore,
Uh-huh.
it's about finding ways to bring English into my life in a natural way.
Exactly. Make it a part of your life,
Okay.
not separate from it.
I love that.
Because fluency isn't just about memorizing rules.
It's about
It's about connecting with the language
Yeah.
on a deeper level
And feeling good about expressing yourself.
and feeling confident.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which honestly can open up so many doors,
Totally.
like personally and professionally.
It's being able to share your ideas, connect with people from all over.
Yeah, travel the world.
Yeah, and do it with ease.
Right.
And it all starts with taking that first step,
Okay.
acknowledging those fears, and finding a way to make it enjoyable.
So for all of you out there who are nodding along like, yeah, I understand English, but speaking it, oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
Remember, this fluency is not like a magical talent.
It's not something you're born with.
It's a
You
skill
can develop
that
it.
you can build with practice and patience.
And a little bit of playfulness.
Yeah.
They said that too.
And the host left us with this really powerful question.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
What is one small step you can take today
Today.
to start bridging that listening-speaking gap?
Ooh, good question.
Right.
So think about that.
Yeah.
What could you do?
Maybe it's one of the things we talked about today.
Maybe something totally different, but whatever it is.
Embrace the challenge. And
it's-
remember,
every conversation
every conversation, even with mistakes,
is a step forward.
is a step forward.
You got this.
You got the. Okay, now before we jump into some more specific techniques,
Oh, yeah.
I want to tell you a little story
Okay. My listener.
about my own struggles with speaking English.
It's really cool how much emphasis they put on, like, the mindset stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, in that Smart Podcast episode.
Totally. It's so easy to get caught up in like,
The technical stuff.
yeah, grammar, vocabulary. But if you're like constantly worried about making mistakes,
You're not going to get anywhere.
no, you're just going to be frozen.
You're going to be too scared to speak.
Exactly. And I think that's why I love this idea of like mimicking the masters.
Oh, yeah. That's a
It's like you're not trying to be perfect.
You're just learning from people who are already doing it well.
Exactly. You're learning from the best.
It's like taking a master class.
Totally.
For speaking.
Okay, so speaking of mimicking,
Uh-huh.
I remember when I was first learning English, I used to watch American sitcoms
Oh, yeah.
with the subtitles on,
Class.
and I would try to like copy their pronunciation.
Their intonation.
Yeah, and even like their slang.
Oh, the slang. That's the best part.
I know, my family thought I was so weird.
I bet they loved it.
But it really helped.
It makes sense, though, because you're, like, immersing yourself
Yeah, and
in
it's like,
sounds of the language.
it's way more fun than like studying a textbook.
Yeah, textbooks are boring.
So you're basically training your brain to recognize those subtle cues.
that convey meaning.
Yeah, like beyond just the words themselves.
Like the music of the language.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I think this technique called shadowing hooks in.
Shadowing, what's that?
Have you ever heard of that?
No, tell me.
Okay, so basically you listen to a recording of a native speaker
Uh-huh.
and you try to repeat what they're saying at the same time.
Like at the exact same time.
Yeah, so it's like you're their shadow.
Whoa, that sounds hard.
It is a little tricky,
Imagine.
but it's supposed to be amazing for your pronunciation.
Really?
Yeah, and your intonation and your fluency all at once.
It's like a triple whammy.
I know, it's intense.
But I can see how it would make you, like, really pay attention
Yeah, to every little
to
detail.
every sound.
And the cool thing is you can do it with anything.
Really?
Yeah, like podcasts, audiobooks, even movies.
So I could just, like, shadow my favorite podcast?
Exactly. As long as you enjoy listening to it,
Okay.
you'll start to see improvement.
That's pretty cool.
It's like a workout
If you're
for your brain.
I like it.
You know, it's funny you mentioned audiobooks because I used to listen to them
Uh-huh.
at like a faster speed
Oh, yeah.
because I thought it would help me understand spoken English better.
I've done that too.
But I realized I was just like trying to catch the words.
You're not really listening
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to how they were saying the word.
to the style.
Yeah, it's like speed reading a novel.
You get to the end, but you didn't really enjoy it.
You miss all the good stuff.
All the nuances.
Exactly, and that's what we're talking about here.
It's not just about understanding the words.
It's about feeling the language.
Yeah, like the emotion behind it.
The flow.
The way it's used to tell stories.
To connect with people.
Yeah, and I think that's why these techniques like shadowing and mimicking are so powerful.
Because you're embodying the language.
You're not just decoding it.
You're making it your own.
Yeah, you're becoming a part of it.
You know, and now that we're talking about like embodying the language,
Yeah.
it makes me think about confidence.
Oh, yeah, huge.
Because even if you have all the skills,
The technical skills?
yeah, if you're not confident,
You're not going to use them.
no, you're just going to be
You're
stuck.
going to be too scared to speak.
And the Smart Podcast people had some good advice for this too.
Oh, what did they say?
They said, set realistic goals,
Okay.
celebrate the small wins,
Little by little.
and find a supportive community.
Yeah, like find your people.
It's your squad.
People who are going through the same thing.
Exactly, because confidence, it's not like something you have or you don't.
It's something you build.
It's a skill.
It's like a muscle.
You got to work it out.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
And just like with exercise, you got to start slow.
You don't want to overdo it?
You're not going to run a marathon on day one.
No way.
So don't expect to have like a super complex conversation
Right.
without building up to it.
Little by little.
Exactly. And this reminds me of something else they said
Okay.
about finding your voice.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It's not just about imitating others.
It's about finding your own way.
your own style.
Yeah.
And that takes time.
It takes experimentation.
Trial and error.
And it's okay to make mistakes
Embrace the stumbles.
because that's how you learn.
That's how you grow.
So, to all of you out there learning English,
Don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
remember it's not about perfection.
It's about progress.
It's about having fun
and finding your own voice.
in this amazing language.
You know, one of the best ways to do that is to like immerse yourself
Oh, yeah, immersion.
in English speaking environments.
Totally.
Speaking of which,
I follow strongly.
I remember when I first moved to an English speaking country, I was so nervous at first. I mean, I could barely order a coffee, but after a while, it was like my brain just switched over.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I had stopped translating everything in my head and I just started absorbing the language.
You know, that's the power of immersion,
It's like
right?
a superpower.
It forces your brain to like adapt
Yeah.
and start processing things differently.
And the crazy thing is, you don't even have to move to another country to do it.
Right. You can create those immersive experiences anywhere.
Totally. Like, join a conversation group.
Find a language exchange partner.
Online, yeah.
Or even just change your phone settings to English.
Oh, yeah. Make your whole digital world English.
Exactly. Surround yourself with a language.
I love it. Yeah.
And you know what else they talked about in the podcast?
What's that?
Motivation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you have to be genuinely interested
In what you're learning.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's not going to stay.
It's so true. It's like I can memorize all the vocabulary words in the world, but if I'm not passionate about the topic.
It's just going to go in one ear and out the other.
Exactly. It's like forcing yourself to eat broccoli.
When you really want pizza.
Yes, exactly. So find something you're actually excited about.
Yeah. Like a hobby or a TV show or.
Current events, yeah.
And use that to learn.
To practice.
To fuel your learning.
I love that because it's not just about learning English.
It's about connecting with it.
on a deeper level.
Yeah. Making it a part of your life.
So it's not this separate thing.
Exactly.
Really integrated.
And you know, another thing they said that I thought was really important.
What's that?
There's no one right way to learn English.
Oh, that's such a good point.
What works for one person.
Might not work for someone else.
So we've talked about all these different techniques.
Shadowing, mimicking, narrating your life.
Finding immersive experiences.
Right, but it's all about experimenting.
Finding what works for you.
What clicks for you.
And don't be afraid to get creative.
They even said like sing along to English songs.
Watch movies with the subtitles on.
Talk to yourself in the mirror.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Right, like I'll talk to my plants if it helps my English.
Exactly. The point is to find what you enjoy.
And what you can stick with.
Yeah, because learning a language is a marathon.
It's not a sprint.
It takes time and effort.
And a lot of patience.
And, you know, in the end,
Goal isn't to sound exactly like a native speaker.
it's to communicate.
Express you.
To connect with others.
Yeah, and to do it confidently.
So embrace your accent.
Celebrate your progress.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes
Because those mistakes are just stepping stones.
on your path to fluency.
So who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one giving advice.
Inspiring us.
Sharing your story.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into speaking English,
We want to leave you with one final thought.
a call to action.
What is that one small action you can take today?
To get closer to your goal,
Of speaking English confidently.
write it down, tell a friend,
Or even better, just go do it.
because the journey of 1,000 miles,
Begins with a single step.
and every step you take,
Brings you closer to fluency.
so keep practicing, keep exploring.
Keep believing in yourself.
We're cheering you on.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep those conversations flowing.